a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Good afternoon and welcome to Spirit Café. I'm Barbara Schreiner-Trudell.
And I'm Cheryl Rogers.
And we're the team bringing you courageous conversations for changing times. How exciting. Let us begin with a land acknowledgement. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, we would like to acknowledge that we live, move, and work within the traditional homeland territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. This land continues to be home to diverse Indigenous peoples, First Nation, Métis, and Inuit, which we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors of our society. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations of Turtle Island. We are one people.
Yes, we are.
That's such an important thing to remember, right? Is that connection, that oneness. So, Miss Cheryl, what are we going to talk about today? What challenging conversation.
Well, it's so interesting. There's so many. One of the things that just sparked a thought in me, and that's what often happens when we're talking, is a conversation I had with somebody yesterday about when, connecting on Facebook or these other places, we see friends that are friends of friends. And it's almost like the world becomes a smaller place. And so one of my thoughts were, is it really that, or is it that we are becoming more connected technologically, and we've always been almost just a short distance away from each other? And then I went to, that also highlights the connection that we all have in our oneness. So coming back to that oneness, we're not separate as much as we think we are. It used to be 6 degrees of separation. I think it's getting closer to maybe realizing that's how we come to oneness.
Yeah, it's really interesting how we are so connected right now. I mean, years ago, I remember the first time war was televised, and that, of course, was Desert Storm. And it was fascinating to me to be sort of in the immediacy of what was going on, which we had never been able to do before. And of course, now we're in the immediacy of all of it around the world, 24/7. It can be a little overwhelming.
Yeah,
I like to ignore the news as much as possible.
Yeah, it's very interesting. That's another topic. We can talk about war, but the other topic for me as well, when we talk about this, is, are we better off now, or were we better off then?
Well, maybe before we were able to pretend that we didn't know what we didn't know. Now it's like everything's out in the open. I think when we look at Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement and the genocide here in Canada with the Indigenous peoples, when we start looking at all of these things that have been going on, they just weren't front and center in our mind because they were kind of buried in the background. Mm-hmm. I don't know about your family life, but in my home, it was, shh, don't say anything outside these doors to anyone, right? And so all of a sudden, there's now this opening up where people are talking about everything. Mm-hmm. And it's raising the level of conversation, the depths of conversations that we're having. Oh, we've got Fiona from Geneva. We've got a group here today. This is exciting.
Wonderful. Wayne from Calgary.
Yeah.
And lots of, I know that we have somebody from South Africa.
Yeah. So
That's
we're we've got
international.
we're international today. I love that. Well, one of the things that I was, really challenged by recently, and this can bring up kind of lots of issues for different people, but the way we here have dealt with the various crises here in Canada, and I'm sure the US as well, with our Indigenous people. We have reservations north of us that do not have water, that are unable to connect outside their small communities with the rest of the country to receive the various resources and things that they need. And I think that to me is a crime of monumental
Mhm.
balance. Like how can we sit back and talk about, Canadians get that, oh, they're such nice people.
Mhm. Yeah, I hear you, Barbara. And when we talk about things like that, it really makes me feel that we really need to get back to the systemic issues. I think what we often do is try and address the symptoms, but we don't get to the cause.
Ooh, yes.
And yeah, and that's with so many things, right?
Yeah.
The justice system, just schooling, all these kind of things, bullying. We start addressing the
Problem.
core. I mean, sorry, the symptoms, but
Yeah.
the cause we never really go deep enough to address those.
Yeah, and I think that's what I love about the unity teaching and the CSL teaching is that we are bringing people back to cause. We're bringing people back to the first cause, which is an idea in mind, right? Consciousness creates everything. So if our consciousness is filled with fear, doubt, and worry, then we act out accordingly. But if we can gain some semblance of understanding of the depth of our being and the fact that we are one with the creative source of the universe, what happens is we begin to respond differently, where we can look at the challenges that are in the world. And instead of trying to put a band-aid on a severed artery, we are actually going back to the beginning and changing something very systemic right off the top, beginning with talking about what's going on, right?
Mhm.
We have to be able to talk about death and war and murder and guns and abortion and rights for religion and people and women and people of the First Nations. And, when we start looking at everything
Mm.
from that place of consciousness, the important thing we need to eradicate, I think, is fear.
That's a great point. And I think what most of us, don't realize is that we look outside of ourselves for the cause. We don't think that we as an individual make a difference. And we really do, because it takes one person at a time, right? And then, I don't know if you remember, there was a book a few years ago called The Tipping Point.
Yes.
And really, it doesn't take that much to get to the tipping point, but it certainly takes one person at a time to start building that momentum.
And each one of us is responsible, right? Like
Mhm.
if each one of us would find our own authentic, honest, sacred self and begin to share that openly with the world, right? And some people aren't going to like us. It's okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
But if we can open ourselves up, like, here's who I am, and I'm going to be me honestly. Oh, Wayne is asking if I led a teen group in Calgary with Carol Carnes. Yes, I did. It was a long time ago, and I'm in the process of starting one here in Toronto. But the idea of shifting all of that energy so that we can begin to create authentic conversations, real conversations, if we can drop the masks long enough to show up and let people see who we are.
Mhm.
Yeah, some people aren't going to like us, but that's, that's
Yeah.
okay.
And that's a scary thing, right? It's a scary thing for most of us. I have to admit, it's a scary thing for me too. So I really do hope that this hour on Wednesdays creates a space for us to do that for even at least an hour, right? It's a start. And to have these difficult conversations without judgment, without negativity, but more with respect, more with being open to hearing, more with curiosity, not wanting to find a right or wrong answer, but just listen to what opinions people have.
Yeah, we can learn so much by listening to each other.
Mhm.
Right. And I think that's a really valid point, Cheryl, is that if we share honestly from where we are, then what happens is we can begin to listen as intently as we're speaking so that we can hear an opposing viewpoint without becoming angry or frustrated or vengeful or resentful or whatever
Mhm.
other emotion we've got going on, but rather to listen to other viewpoints so that we might learn something. We might
Mhm.
deepen our own understanding. It might deepen our convictions. It might change them.
And it
Uh,
might not.
and it might not. It might all stay the same. But if we can do it with respect,
Mhm.
you know and so we want to invite everybody. We've got a few of you on the call here today, and what I want to invite you to do is to send us an email at
Or
spirit
put in the chat even while you're here.
I'll put it in the chat while you're here, but you can send us an email at spiritcafe2@gmail.com, and we will take whatever issues you mention in there and we will bring them up today if we if we get it here in the chat, or next week or the week after as we go on, because creating this conversation is a collective. So
Mhm.
all of you are invited to participate. I love what uh, Zodi Moreau wrote. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. My apologies. Openness plus honesty equals opportunity for unity. Yes,
Exactly. Yes,
yes, that's
absolutely.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Oh, and Wayne is talking about how he assisted me briefly with the teen group. Whoa, we're going back a long ways, Wayne. Yeah, and for you, it was a new teaching. I'd been in it for a little while. Well, now I've been in it for a really long while, but I'm
Mhm.
loving it. I'm loving it. So
I think one of the things that I just thought about when you were talking is it's almost like we have to step outside of ourselves to be able to be here and be in that space, right? To put that ego self aside, and we'll never get rid of it, and we shouldn't. It plays a purpose, right?
it
It
has.
protects us in certain situations, and it has a role. I think the challenge is that we've given it too much attention. And so, how do we now acknowledge it, but try and put that aside for a while?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like, I heard somebody once talk about, imagine you've got two wolves, a
Mhm.
nice one and a bad one. Which one are you feeding?
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
think we need to feed that part of us that's willing to listen and learn. Feed that part of us that's willing to discover something new about
Mhm.
life and the journey. And I think that's where we get, we kind of get called to the mat sometimes. I recently had a couple of people I knew who had gone through rapes, and one of them reported and one did not, and I understand both perspectives. But I look at something like that happening, and in my mind I'm thinking it should be reported, because that's the only way we begin to make change. But at the same time, I absolutely understand a woman not wanting to report it. So I don't know what people's viewpoints are on that, or what your viewpoint is, Cheryl.
Mhm.
The idea of rape, what is it? Sex act, violence?
Well, I mean, rape is definitely a violent act. That's without a doubt.
Absolutely.
You know, I think when it comes to reporting and things like that, it's such a personal experience. It's such a personal thing, and somebody may not be in a space to report it right now, but they may be at a later time. So I always think that should be an option. It should never be that, you know, it's too late to report it now. Why didn't you report it then? And I think, you know, for me, what's important with being with people, being present in those people's space that have experienced such trauma, is just to be there and to listen and to without judgment, without criticism, without having any answers, but just being able to respect where they're at and how they're feeling.
And one of the things you said is so important in a lot of different situations, and that's being able to listen to the person's story without having any answers.
Mm-hmm.
One of the places that I've noticed we kind of fall down sometimes is if we have someone close to us who gets a diagnosis of cancer or something that is terminal. And there's this idea that, well, I don't know what to say, so maybe I just won't phone.
Yeah.
And the truth is, there is nothing to say.
Mm-hmm.
There are no words that are going to alleviate a person's fear or their pain or whatever their experience is. Nothing's going to change that. But being with them as you've always been with them,
Mm-hmm.
just being you and letting them be them, there's a great power in that that's really honoring and beautiful, and I think so important. And the same thing when somebody loses a loved one, somebody very close to them.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like, what do you say? Well, you don't have to say anything. Just sit with them, just be there. I think, there's no, we're always trying to find the right thing to say or the answers, but what if there are no answers?
And what if there's no such thing as right and wrong?
There
Right?
you go.
Who gives it meaning? Who says it's right and who says it's wrong? We are so opinionated,
We
and
are.
that's what it is, right? It becomes an opinion, and we stand so firm in our
Yeah.
opinions. And yeah, man gives it, I think, the meaning of what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, all those kind of things, right? And some people will argue and say, no, we know what bad is. And you know, Barbara, you said something which I really appreciated on Sunday at service. You spoke about, somebody asked you about that. Somebody said, you know, what about all the wars that are going on? We were talking about prayer, affirmative prayer. And, you know, what do we do when a child is sick? Like, how do we understand that? And I don't know if you remember what you said, if you would be able to repeat. No, but you really spoke about stepping back and being able to acknowledge that I don't understand everything, and that's okay. But trusting that there is one power, one presence everywhere, and that there is a reason for things somewhere. I'm using my own words, and maybe you want to expand on that, but really being able to expand the bigger picture and trust that things are happening the way they should right now. Or could, you know,
Because we don't have the big picture,
no.
right? And so we don't know. One of the things I've always said is don't pray for people with your idea of what a healing is, because that's kind of an assault of itself, in a sense. Because I think for me, when somebody says, oh, pray for my husband, pray for my sister, pray for this country or that country, I always pray highest and best good. I always just leave it open because I don't know what the healing looks like. And because I don't know what the healing looks like, I don't want to put my belief system onto it and make it into something that maybe it isn't. And so it's really with everything like that, it's about sitting back and realizing I don't know what I don't know. and getting okay with that. I don't have to have all the answers. It's all right if I have an answer and if I don't have an answer. And if I don't, well, maybe I'll go look it up and see if I can educate myself and figure something out for you. But the truth is, each one of us knows within ourselves what's best for us. And no one outside of us can know that.
I love that.
Yeah,
And yeah, and that comes back to taking responsibility for oneself, right? For our thoughts, our
absolutely.
words, our actions, and understanding it's not ours to understand where others are coming from.
No, no. I remember a neighbor of mine was sharing that, his young baby daughter died of SIDS at a very young age. And I thought, what do you say to that?
Mhm.
There are no words. I mean, as a parent, I can imagine what that would feel like, but it's strictly just my imagination. I cannot even begin to comprehend the level of grief that would create. And
Yeah.
so it's like when we're having these conversations or when we're journeying along, all we're doing is an exploration. And I think that's what I hope for Spirit Cafe is that we just touch base on stuff.
Yeah.
And you can put things into the chat that you believe about the topics we're talking about. We're going to get them quite specific in upcoming weeks when we have guests on as well. But in the meantime, we just wanted to kind of
Mhm.
open the door to all of it. let's dig up the muck, bring it to the surface,
Yeah.
and take a look at how we could be in the world to begin to shift and transform the consciousness into one of respect and love and admiration and compassion and kindness. How could
Mhm.
we get there? And part of that is no longer hiding who we are.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because in the grand scheme of things, everybody's created unique and special, perfect, whole, and complete.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And
Hmm.
you know, I always I respond in the moment. Nothing is scripted with us, right? We sort of we bounce off each other, which is what I love about our relationship. And one of the things I heard the other day, which I also thought was just quite amazing, is that when you think about it, how many versions of you are there? How many versions of me are there, right? There's the version that I think I am. There's the version that you see me as. There's the version that my children see me as, their mother. The version that my husband sees me. Like, how many versions of us? And if you have to speak to people, would they be the same version or would they be different?
Well, I mean, anybody who's gone on a first date knows how we can really put on the mask. Or the first time we meet the in-laws, or there's so many opportunities for us to go, wait a minute, going for a job interview, like, oh, here, let me be what I think they want me to be, rather than who I actually am, which is really,
Mhm.
really interesting.
Exactly.
Um,
Like Emily says, how does one create a shift and know who we truly are? I think that, I don't know. I think we change every minute of every day. So who we are is how we are and in this moment.
yeah,
Everything we learn about, everything we talk about, everything I read about, I know just expands my consciousness a little bit. Expands my minimalistic knowledge. Like when I think I've got knowledge, I actually I realize how little I do know with the little bit I'm learning. And so for me, I never want to be an expert on anything because I'm always continuing to grow and learn.
exactly. Wayne just said I'm a work in progress. It's like, yeah, we all are. And Julia asked a question: how do we tap into ourselves to hear what is really best for us, and what is the process? For me, I always listen to my body. When something is not quite right for me, my stomach might be a little knotted up about it. Um, I just tap into my body. I'm not sure exactly how to express that, but one of the little prayers I do though, if I'm making a big decision about something and I'm not sure if it's the best thing for me, I do this little prayer that is, if for any reason I should not do this, put up a wall so high that even I can't get over it. And anytime I've done that, that it's something I shouldn't do, then there's something really loud that gets my attention.
That's
And
great.
so that one helps me. The other is I listen. Do I feel peaceful in the decision? Do I feel kind of uptight or upset? Does it feel light and warm? Does it challenge me a little bit, but still excite?
Mhm.
Um, those are the things that I look for in making any decisions in my life, like trying to figure out what's best for me. When it came to starting CSL on the Lake, the when I was asked to do that, I thought, well, yeah, I could do that. And then I just went, well, let me see what happens. And so I took time each day to simply take a step forward, and there's
Mhm.
never a block. Everything happened easily, beautifully, and comfortably. So that was acknowledgement to me that it was the right and perfect thing to do. Arlene Vernon is saying meditate for connection to your higher self has helped her in believing and trusting in that inner intuition. So
I
yeah,
have to say that that's a key for me as well. Is and
absolutely.
I don't do it enough. My intention is always I want to do this. I don't need to do anything. I want to do this every single day. Do I do it every day? No. However, when I do meditate, I know that that is the space that brings me peace and quiet and alignment with my higher self, getting out of my way,
Yeah.
and just allowing whatever to come into my body. And it's and feeling as well. When I'm in meditation, it's about those feelings, right? And what feels right and what feels good. Sometimes though, sometimes we have excitement, which can be like anxiety,
Yeah.
or fear, but it's really excitement. And we I just think sometimes we need to also be willing and open, to challenge ourselves a little. So it's how do you know which one, right? But I think meditation is key. And for me, that I meditate and then I get on with my day, because I think that's the key, is just being able to have that quiet time
Yeah.
for 15, 20 minutes once or twice a day, and then get on with everything and trust that the universe will unfold as it should.
It always does. The sun comes up every morning and the moon comes out every night. And it's like, we get all caught up in trying to control the universe. And the truth is that we have none in that regard. But we do have the ability to choose how we respond to life, how we show up in life, and all the different little things that we've got going on for ourselves that we can begin to look at, and we can shift and change things by changing our thinking. We can change our entire life experience.
Mm,
We'll change the events. We'll
mm,
change the experience of the events by
exactly.
changing our mind. And that's
Because everything is about perception, right? This is something we always talk about. And so I could have a whole conversation on reality and what is real. Is there such a thing as reality? And because really reality is what each and every one of us make it, and it will be different for everybody. You and I can experience exactly the same thing at the same time in the same space, and we will have a totally different experience or interpretation of it.
interpretation. Yeah. Well, and I think that's the big thing. I've talked about that before. I come from a family of 10 kids, and you could take the very same day and ask all of us, and we would have 10 completely different experiences. Some would be good, some would be horrible, some would be mediocre, but they'd all be different. And who's right?
Mhm.
So reality, there's nothing real about it. It's my perception of this moment that has made it real for me, but you know. So we're going to take a little commercial break here and we'll be right back. Emmy Cassie has got a question for us, so we'll come back to that when we come back. You are watching Spirit Cafe here at noon Eastern Time in Canada and the US, and come on back real soon. We'll be here waiting for you.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And we're back. So Cheryl, what can you say to Emmy Cassie about, what can you share about letting go of any struggle or perceived situation or condition to come back to our oneness?
I think, for everybody, it may be something different, but for me, definitely meditation. That's my way of, when I meditate and I have these thoughts or things that come into my mind, one of the things that I do, and it works for me because I've been doing it for so many years, is I put them in a balloon. I blow up this balloon and I put all these thoughts in the balloon and I tie it up and I just let it go. And I just see it floating higher and higher and higher and away from me, just to come back to that state of no thinking.
Yes.
Which I wonder if we ever do, but that's the way that I practice it for myself.
Yeah, mine is similar too, in that, taking time in meditation to simply sit in the silence, to allow myself to just be for a short time without doing, that makes a big difference. And also I use spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer to tell myself a new story. When I'm getting caught up in something and I'm too busy looking at a problem, what I want to do is go, wait a minute, I live in a loving universe that is intelligent and creative. It is all powerful. It is present everywhere equally. That means it's right here. And so I start telling myself and reminding myself of the incredible benefit of life and living, and the fact that everything that's going on is happening in this divine intelligence. There's no separation. There's no me and you. There's just simply our individualized expression of this one thing. And so the connection is immediate. So really, meditation and prayer.
Yeah. I think also things like nature, right? Just getting outside and walking in nature and appreciating the beauty, the birds, the songs, those kind of things. As I get older, I've really come to the space, which I'm okay with, that we are here for the blink of an eye.
Yes.
So what is really important enough to be so upset about, or so, it's a blink of an eye. And I do read these wonderful books that allow me to have these positive affirmations and feelings. I think for me, when I have an affirmation, I try and put the feeling of it behind it so that it feels real, right? Because we know that the conscious mind and the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's real or not. So being able to affirm that, for example, I am peace, and just feeling that peace, I am light, I am love, and feeling that, knowing that, and nothing else exists right now. So those kind of things, I think you have the power all along. Yes, we do. And it's so interesting because I do believe that we come here knowing that, and then we're programmed to forget, and our work is to remember. I mean, really, what is that about?
That's the only thing we have to do is remember who it is that is, who it is, what it is, what's going on. I did a talk on Monday night about the blessing of inconvenience and the difference between inconvenience and problems. Because a lot of things that inconvenience us, we see as huge problems. And
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, they really are not.
Well, that also makes me think about catastrophes. Like we talk about these catastrophes, and why are a lot of these natural catastrophes in nature a catastrophe to us? That is because we plant ourselves in a certain piece of land, in a certain area, and if something happens in that place, it's a catastrophe. But if you think about it, years and years ago, there were, people were nomads. They moved to higher land. Animals know when there is a fire or a flood or something coming, and they will move to higher land. The unfortunate thing is that they are running out of space to move to, and they're being boxed in. But that's a whole nother story. Freedom.
That is another story, and that's one. Julia was asking, I can't sit still, but I enjoy nature and appreciate it. Is this truly meditation? Yes, it can be. Absolutely. Yeah. Getting out in nature and allowing yourself to immerse yourself in the beauty, the wonder, the sounds, the feeling, allowing yourself to fully be in that. Absolutely. That is a form of meditation. Mm-hmm. Meditation can take many, many forms. There can be walking meditations, there can be chanting mantras, there can be breath work, visualization. Meditation is highly misunderstood.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yes, go out in nature, Julia, and do that. You'll be so, so glad. And the idea of doing, spiritual mind treatment and allowing ourselves to come to a new conclusion about our life experience is really an important one, because ultimately, like you said, we're here for a minute, just for a minute. Are we living or are we putting in time?
Yeah, exactly.
People putting in time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's because I believe that, it takes to coming to that awareness to be able to live. And a lot of us don't have that awareness. We have blinkers on, I believe. We only see what's in front of us and nothing on the sides and behind us, or nothing that we cannot see can we believe in, but yet electricity we cannot see, radio waves we cannot see, and look at how
gravity we cannot see.
Yeah, and we are connecting. Look at that, because of all these things we cannot see. Mary Ellen also says, I ask myself now, is this life or death? Answer is usually not so much. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I'm not sure that there is such a thing as death, personally.
No, I don't.
Yeah. So for me, it's just a state of being. It's a unique expression of the oneness in this moment, right here, right now. And for Center for Spiritual Living, treatment, mind treatment, is what is referred to in Unity as affirmative prayer. And just for those who are from Unity, because I don't know if people know that, but I'm from Unity and you're from Center for Spiritual Living. And isn't that wonderful? Because New Thought is one and the same thing. It doesn't matter which organization we are affiliated with. And that's one of the things that we want to also bring to the world is, let's come together rather than be siloing ourselves.
But my way's best. But my way's best. Come on. No?
No. There's only one way.
There's only one thing going on. It is interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up because the idea of New Thought, for example, as one example, is there's a number of different kind of factions within that, and we all teach the same thing.
Mhm.
We might speak about it a little differently. We might use the Bible as a focus. We might use the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita, or we might mix them all up and use a little bit of everything. We might use none of those books whatsoever and talk more around the idea of our personal experiences. But the reality is we're all teaching the same thing. We teach oneness. There's only one thing going on. And I think the most important thing that we can do is to really do our best to live that rather than just giving it lip service. Let's actually practice.
Well, that's what life's about, I think, is that experience, right? The experience. And Wayne is saying we are all made of stars. Yes, we are. We are all made of the same, we all exist of and in the same substance, whatever that is, right? I like to call it energy, universe. Some people call it God. So it's, just going back, I wanted to mention as well, what about people like Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, Jose Dispenza? Like, they are bringing what we have been teaching and learning, and for years, for over 100 years, they're bringing it to the fore in new understanding, new language. And I also believe that what's happened now is, in those days, science and New Thought, spirituality, everything was so far apart. And today, science and spirituality have become one.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
Ernest Holmes talked about that in the beginning of the textbook, The Science of Mind.
Mm-hmm.
The day when religion and science shall walk hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the idea of, because what we're teaching is very scientific.
Yeah.
We're teaching the fact that what you're thinking about, you're bringing into form. Like,
exactly.
You're moving the energy into form. Like, how great is that? And as Wayne just said, quantum entanglement proves living spirit. It's like we forget that everything is just energy. There's just one thing. And we manifest it in different ways. This chair I'm sitting in, that's so nice and comfy. I love my chair.
And is it solid? It's not solid. It may seem solid. It looks solid.
Yeah.
But there's spaces between those atoms that are vibrating in a dense form to become the chair.
Exactly. Same as the computer, same as our bodies, all of it just energy.
Yeah.
And if everything is just energy, why do we take all of it so seriously?
Yeah, exactly.
I think we need to laugh a little bit more, play a lot more, and, take life a little lighter.
I agree with you. And I also agree that being in this human experience, we experience both sides.
Yes.
I know for myself, I love talking about this. I love having conversations with other people. I truly believe everything that we talk about. And yet I can have my down days. I can have my days of not wanting to see anybody or speak to anybody. And I think we all do, right? And so I think it's important to be able to acknowledge that and be okay with that. Because we realize that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and to allow ourselves to do that and not to be so harsh on ourselves.
Well, and we came into this life to have a human experience. And so why are we so resistant to having it? You know, we want it to all be good,
Because
whatever.
we're conditioned. That's why.
Yeah, it's the conditioning. So that's what needs to shift. You know, the school system. You know, I
Yeah.
remember my youngest, because, you know, she's the closest to me at this moment. You know, fewer years between then and now. But the idea of the school system and how it operates, trying to create conformity around the
Mhm.
board. It's like every single person has to fit into this one little tiny slot. And of course they don't. And
Mhm.
then when they don't, it's like, let's slap a label on,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And it's, well, couldn't it just be that this child's unique and this child, they're all unique? And because they're all unique, they all require something a little bit different.
Mhm.
I have 4 children. They all require very different things.
Yeah,
I love them all, but I will treat them all a little bit differently because they require different things from me.
exactly. And then, so that's schooling. Then we bring in social norms. We bring in family dynamics. We bring in cultures. You know, these are all things that condition our minds into thinking and believing what we do. And then it becomes, you know, I don't know, for us, I believe, that are here, we start looking for meaning of things. We start looking for, what is this about? And we start down this road of discovering what we've come to believe and be in this moment here now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we do look for something to agree with us.
Mhm.
And when things don't agree with us, especially, I love how I used to be around my negativity.
Mhm.
It was like I would tell my best friend this horrible, terrible, awful thing happened, blah, 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 and rant about it. And I want them to go, oh, yeah, poor you.
Yeah,
And if they wouldn't do that, I'd be so offended. Like,
yeah,
what do you mean change my thinking, change my life? Come
yeah,
on. That's not what I was asking for. I wanted a little bit of sympathy.
yeah.
But the truth is, we all have the ability to choose a new thought, to begin to change our experience based on whatever it is that we truly desire out of life. And everything comes into our experience that actually is moving us in the direction of our greatest possibility.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sometimes it makes us uncomfortable, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Exactly. Mhm. What is learned, and know what has to be unlearned in order to thrive and be with what is in the moment. Yes, I agree, Emmy. That's we have a lot of unlearning to do.
We do. I like that though. I mean,
Mhm.
because there are things that I believed when I was younger that I don't believe now.
Mhm.
There are, you know, things that my parents showed me or taught me or modeled for me that created the person that I am today. And part of that I had to let go of because it didn't, pardon me, it didn't actually serve
Mhm.
me. It was sort of borrowed beliefs from somebody out of my past rather than my own real mechanism for life and living, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I love all the comments that are coming. Thank you uh, for sharing and your thoughts and questions.
yeah. So one of the things, like, there's going to be a lot of things we bring up over the next little while. Our guest next week is a woman who is an activist, but she's also a science mind practitioner and musician. She's a great singer. And she is someone that she's a Black woman who is really dealing with the whole story around Black lives and what's going on she's in the US, she's in San Diego. So she's living day by day. Her family's from St. Louis, I believe. So she's living this day by day, which is a very different perspective than those of us who do not have to live that experience.
Mhm.
And I think the conversation next week's going to be great. She took a group of of young white people to Alabama, and they went into, I think it's called the Liberty Museum. And it was an interesting experience for everyone to be able to see what it was that occurred so many years ago, but what's occurring still today. And that's the part that I find a little bit distressing, is that things haven't changed so much.
Yeah.
Might have buried it down a little bit, but we haven't changed so much. And that's the part that, for me, I'm hoping that this show and other things that we're doing are going to have an impact that get people thinking about, how can I do life differently? How can I show up differently? How can I look at the people around me without immediately jumping to a judgment? Right?
Did you ever watch the Moses Code?
I don't.
Well, anyway, in the Moses Code, they talk about the comma being in the wrong space when Moses says, I am that I am. And it's really, I am that, comma, I am.
I am. Yeah.
Right? And so that's one thing that I always use in my mind when I get triggered by something or upset about something or even, love something. I am that. I am.
That's a great comment, because the idea that I am is the collective, right? So all of it is in me, and I'm in all of it. It's like, it changes. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot, because that's what I absolutely believe. And that if I can change my mind about anything, I actually am thinking in the collective. And so I can change the collective consciousness, the power of one, right? And if there are enough people, I think it's Greg Braden who talked about the percentage of the population that's required in order to make sort of a quantum shift, where consciousness changes right across the board. That really excites me, because the idea that it's only like a little over 1%, I believe.
It's not much at all. I don't remember how much, but I remember it not being much at all. And so I really believe that we are in the process of a quantum leap.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that as we journey along, that we're really creating something that's getting momentum. Like, I look at the New Thought Media that Reverend Robert has started, and it's like, this thing is so fantastic. This is so valuable to be able to have a place where we can share spiritual ideas, come up with possibilities, discover our true oneness, be able to explore the ups and downs of things, whether we agree or disagree is okay, being in conversation about life in general. I love what this network is doing. And I think this is what the world is calling for right now. Yeah. And so get ready, Rev Robert, because things are about to take off.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a solution.
It's really wonderful what this platform is offering.
Great.
Yeah, and being so inclusive, right? There's no exclusivity, it's inclusive.
Yeah. And I think that's a lesson for all of us. I know I'm going to be starting in-person services come Monday. Ta-da, yay. And even finding ways of including other sacred practices and such to round out what it is we're doing. I'm really excited to have Anania come in and do a ceremony from the African tradition to begin to open our space. And I love that, because to me, there is only one thing. And so all of us have different ways of being in that conversation or in that experience, but we can learn from each other. right? And that to me is the most beautiful thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Fiona is talking about this global platform that allows everyone in Europe to expand and to be in the discussion. So, yay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so good, so
Yeah,
good. The
absolutely.
walls are coming down. I had an interesting experience when I was first in ministry. I was in Vernon, BC, and I was living at a B&B, and there was a gentleman who was staying there who was from East Berlin, and he was talking about what his experience was when the wall came down. And he said he was a soldier in East Berlin. And he said all of a sudden his mates are saying the wall is coming down, and he's like, what are you talking about? That's a permanent structure, it ain't going anywhere. And they came running to the wall, and there it was being dismantled and torn apart, and they had no idea it was coming.
Wow.
And I think we've seen that around the world with different places, that the idea of communism and that ultimate control over people is disappearing. And it's happening because there's a resistance
Mhm.
to being told how my life needs to be. And rather coming to a place of deciding for myself, this is who I am, and here's how I choose to
Mhm.
express my uniqueness in the world.
Mhm.
Um, but it was interesting that he said we had no idea, none.
Yeah,
And we got to the wall, and it was utter disbelief.
yeah,
And that changed through the whole country into chaos,
yeah.
which
And that's,
changed
I mean,
lives.
that's another great topic, right? Chaos. We need to have chaos. We need to have all
Yes.
this stuff upheavaled so that we can acknowledge that it's there, because you can't change anything until you acknowledge it, and then be able to create change.
Yeah.
Um, so I invite people to look at the strife and the chaos and the pandemic and all these things in a different light.
And
It's
find the
really,
blessings in all of them.
that's it.
Yeah. The big one that I found with the pandemic was the way wildlife and nature was restored while we
Yes,
were shut in. And it
yes.
happened so fast. And when we look at our world right now, and we look at climate change and the things that are happening, what will heal that is for us to step back for a moment,
Mhm.
because we're destroying it so quickly. And well, you and I have some conversation around this with climate healers. So if you want more information, go to climatehealers.org. And Dr. Sailesh Rowe is the founder of that, brilliant man who's created a great bunch of material to help us understand climate
Mhm.
change and how to solve it.
Mhm.
So we're in a new place, a new world, a new reality, and Cheryl and I are here to sort of poke the bear. That's kind of what I hope to do. I don't know about you,
Look,
Cheryl. What do you
poke
hope?
the bear and open a space for people to share what's on their hearts and minds, no
Yes.
matter what it is, and for us to be able to just have a conversation. Bring
Yeah,
your coffee, bring your tea. If you're somewhere else in the world and it's nighttime, bring your glass of wine. Yeah, and
absolutely.
let's just continue the conversation.
And send us your ideas, any, sort of subject matter that you think would be great to talk about here. Please send that to spiritcafe2@gmail.com. We would really, really love to hear your thoughts. We plan on talking about, medically assisted death. We're going to talk about abortion. We're going to talk about women's rights. We're going to talk about, you know, incarcerations and death penalty. And we're just going to talk about anything and everything, religion and politics included.
Mhm.
Are you
Exactly.
ready?
So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. And we look forward to seeing you again next week.
And if you loved it, please tell everybody, and be sure to like, subscribe, And we'll see you all again next week. Thank you, Cheryl. I love doing this with you. Bye, everybody. Till next time.
Bye.